Welcome to PeopleTools Tech Tips. I'm Randall Groncki. This is part 11 of our Build Insights Dashboard series. Today we're doing real-time indexing in PeopleSoft Insights. I refer to it as RTI for most of this video and in my blog post. RTI is the holy grail for many PeopleSoft Insights users. How do I see what is happening right now in my system? Not a few hours from now or tomorrow or after a refresh, but now. We're close enough to now so that it's meaningful. I'm going to show you how to enable RTI in your PeopleSoft Insights dashboards. As always, a little housekeeping first. I'm assuming you watched episode 10 of my Building Insights series. In that video, we deployed a dashboard and gave it to users. I'm going to enable that dashboard with RTI data. If you need to review that video, links are below. If you want to jump forward and to a specific section in this video, see the timecodes also below. You may want to watch this through and get the general vibe, and that's great too. As always, all the objects you see here are available on PeopleToolsTechTips.com and our GitHub site, PeopleTools Tech Tips. There's a lot of planning and design going into real-time indexing that we really need to discuss. Jump ahead if you just care about the configuration and triggers. But before you implement RTI, you should at least be aware of the impact it has on your system. First off, RTI takes a village. At most of the implementations I have been part of, there would be several people sitting around the table discussing and planning RTI before we enabled it. This is much more than clicking a checkbox or creating a view. The PS admins need a seat. There is a required setting on the process schedulers that needs set and maintained for every environment with RTI. The DBAs are there too. RTI requires triggers in your PeopleSoft database. Don't put triggers in your database without working with the DBAs first. The developers are there, and maybe that's you. We need to design, configure, and implement the datasets and dashboards. Next requirement, is your PeopleTools up to date? You need to be running at least PeopleTools 8.6.0 to implement RTI. As of this video, the current PeopleTools version is 8.6.2, and every PeopleTools version has introduced new capabilities and refinements. You may want to turn off RTI during large data events such as mass updates and batch processes. Having RTI on a table such as HCM job table may provide timely insights. However, running mass updates on the table for an event such as an annual salary increase can drown out the listener, resulting in a significant lag before OpenSearch is updated with the latest information. A batch process such as an interface may have the same effect. Plan during design to determine which, if any, processes should turn off RTI during execution. After the mass update is completed, schedule an incremental update to bring OpenSearch in sync with your PeopleSoft data. Our next item is how the dataset is sourced. RTI only works with search definitions using PS query and connected query. The server process works with those query definitions at runtime to execute for only the keys of the changed data. By the way, the App Engine libraries defined in the search definition will not run. Search definitions allow us to configure App Engine libraries to run before and after our query executes to extract the data. I commonly use these pre-processing AE libraries to populate and calculate data in work tables before sending to Insights. Again, these App Engine libraries will not run during the RTI update. The RTI configuration does allow you to designate an app class to execute prior to the query SQL executing. Take in the whole picture during design time and avoid duplicating logic in both App Engines and app packages. Yet another concern is PeopleSoft transactions with parent-child relationships. RTI can get messy if you attach your trigger to the wrong table in your data structure. Plan on attaching RTI to the parent table, and add, delete, or change to that parent will trigger one RTI instance to report the transaction to OpenSearch. Attaching the trigger to the child tables can get very noisy and messy quickly. The transaction would trigger for every child of that one parent. For example, attaching RTI triggers to the line item on an invoice structure. If someone adds an invoice with 100 line items, you want RTI to trigger to execute once for the whole transaction, not trigger 100 times for each of the line items. This can slow down, or worse, drown out your RTI performance. Speaking of triggers, each environment this RTI-enabled search definition is migrated to will need the triggers created there. Triggers may also be dropped during migrations and upgrades. Have a plan to validate your needed triggers exist. We need to configure the process scheduler. This, of course, is for your PeopleSoft admins. The process scheduler needs to be updated to enable RTI. Shut down the process scheduler, enter the configuration menu, and make sure that 6 real-time indexing is set to yes. There is a follow-on discussion for your admins about vertical and horizontal scaling for your server processes. We'll leave that discussion to them and for another time. Restart your process schedulers after turning on RTI. Another conversation to include is the PS admins is configuring the RTI server process. PeopleSoft delivers default values for heartbeat, refresh interval, and set size. Heartbeat is how often in seconds the process scheduler looks for new transactions. The set size is the maximum number of transactions processed in that interaction. I would leave the defaults until you see there is room for improvement with your specific data sets. To configure real-time indexing, we need to start with a working search definition that is powered by a query or connected query and deployed to OpenSearch. This is my training search definition. It's sourced by PS Query. On the Advanced tab, we see that the real-time indexing available checkbox is selected. I'm going to enable RTI for this search definition. Navigate to Configure Real-Time Indexing, find your search definition in the grid. In the Trigger Record section, choose your trigger record. This is the primary table that your data structure will show and add, delete, or change in the transaction. Then click the Enable Real-Time Indexing at the top of the page, click Save, and 2 links appear. Click on the Trigger SQL link, and PeopleSoft generates a specific Trigger SQL for the table declared in the Trigger section. Depending on your browser settings, the SQL will either download or pop up to a new browser tab. This is the Trigger SQL generated by PeopleSoft for my training search definition. Save this Trigger SQL to a file. Run the Trigger SQL against the database. In most cases, the DBAs will be doing this for you. Here you see the Oracle SQL trigger compiling. Of course, our last step is to test our real-time indexing is actually working. Let's look at our simple dashboard before any transactions. There are a total of 241 transactions. 169 of those transactions are for company GBI. I'll navigate to the Quick Enrollment page and add a class for KU0002. I'm going to add a PeopleTools class to Charles's record. Save, and we're done. Going back to our dashboard, click the refresh button, and voila! There are now a total of 242 transactions, and company GBI has 170. Switching over to the Discover tab in Insights, we can filter and see that employee KU0002 has 1 class. Open the detail, and we see that this row's last updated date is April 26. I'll create a quick metric with filters for training. The first filter is counting rows created today. The second filter counts all rows not created today. And we see that just this 1 row was created and sent to OpenSearch today. All the other data in there is from a previous indexing. This one simple example may not be very exciting, but expand out this example and you can see the real power of real-time indexing in your Insights dashboards. Imagine users from all over the world creating and updating PeopleSoft business data, and also see that data sourced from your PeopleSoft environment instantly available in your dashboards. And of course, this works for all visualization types: bars, pies, maps, tag clouds, and all the others, not just metrics. PeopleSoft Insights is a powerful tool to tell the stories in your data to your users. And now it's even more powerful and relevant because it's real time. Not refreshed last night or over lunch. Now, right now. How are you going to use real-time indexing to tell your data stories to your users right now? Thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you next time here on PeopleTools Tech Tips.